Welcome to the Lead Pedal Podcast with your host, Bruce Outridge, where he talks all things trucking. Now let's get rolling.
Hello, welcome to the Lead Pedal Podcast. This is episode number 1005, and today we're going to be talking with Matt Schrap. Now, Matt is with the Harbor Trucking Association in California, and there's a whole big movement going on to make things greener down there. We're going to find out how that's affecting the industry and what his thoughts are. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Hey folks, Bison Transport is looking for owner-operators, and if that is you, they want to talk to you. Here's what they can offer you as an independent owner-operator. Their goal is to help you grow and maximize your profits. You need a strategy to increase revenue while minimizing operational expenses. Bison's exclusive owner-operator program provides you with the benefits of a large fleet while running your independent operation. Look at things like their strong fuel discount. Bison has a dedicated fuel team who negotiate discounts for our owner-operators by working with our preferred suppliers. By leveraging their fleet of over 2,000 trucks, they have the buying power to ensure they receive one of the strongest fuel discounts in the business. Hey, how about free fuel advice? That's right, Bison offers valuable trip-based fuel advice for you via satellite message to owner-operators free of charge. An owner-operator who takes advantage of this information can save up to $3,000 a year. And the best thing of all, Bison has new rates. That's right, Bison has increased the rates for long-haul cross-border owner-operators. This includes a U.S. premium increase of 2 cents a U.S. mile, and that's not all. Bison has an additional premium for owner-operators who hold a valid fast card. Where can you find out more? Well, go to Bison Transport, and the best place to start is at fuelyourjourney.ca. Oh, by the way, tell them that the Lead Pedal Podcast sent you. All right, so the Harbor Trucking Association is a nonprofit association who advocates for the trucking industry on the West Coast. And we had a chance to talk with CEO Matt Schrap about what's going on. He's a leading expert with trucking regulations and loves to discuss things about advanced clean fleets rule, which I first heard about on another podcast and was really intrigued. It's an aggressive goal, which is good to have, but at the same time, not sure it's doing so well. So anyway, we're going to talk to Matt about what's going on in the industry down in California and what his thoughts are and how that's going to affect not only the industry of containers, but the industry as a whole, because everything is connected in our logistics world, as you know. So let's get on the line, and we'll be back with Matt Schrap of the Harbor Trucking Association. Hey folks, have you heard about Driver Check and the services they offer? They have amazing services specifically for the transportation industry, along with many other industries. They have alcohol and drug testing, occupational health services, hearing protection, fit testing, and a whole lot more. They are a leader in how to handle cannabis in the workplace and also how to handle COVID in the workplace. And you do not want to miss their great event that they have each year, the annual Fitness for Duty Summit. So where can you learn more? Where can you get information in order to keep your workplace safe? Well, go to drivercheck.ca, and when you go there, if you meet the team, please let them know that the Lead Pedal Podcast sent you. Thanks very much, and we'll see you later. All right, everybody, on the line, I have Matt Schrap, CEO of the Harbor Trucking Association in California. How are you doing today, Matt?
Good, Bruce. How are you?
Good. I'm interested. This is it's amazing how many messages I've gotten now about California. And I was just were you on the What the Truck podcast with Tim Dooner not too long ago, I think, or he was talking about it
a few months ago, and then I'll be on with him here coming up pretty soon. So
okay. So I saw it the other day where he was talking about the charging stations, and which we're going to get into today. And it was funny because right then, I think it was right after that, I got an email from your team saying, "Hey, Matt would be." I go, "What is this like?" Some kind, just because I watched this video. That's okay. So,
right.
So tell us about you first before we get into the Harbor Trucking Association and all of the stuff going on in California. Tell us how'd you get into the industry? Did you used to drive? How'd you get into this game?
Well, ironically enough, for the last 20 years, I've been kind of dealing with the regulatory policy side, especially out here in California. Air quality is a major issue. As the old saying goes out here, diesel starts with die, right? So they are passing rules and regulations to more or less eliminate the usage of internal combustion engines or diesel engines. So that's really where I cut my teeth on the regulatory side of things. But ever since I was a freshman in high school, I'd worked in warehouses and had been unloading 53-foot trailers, loading them, going around Northern Nevada, delivering hotel supplies like soap, laundry detergent, cleaning chemicals. And then after high school, I managed a warehouse. Throughout college, was a receiving manager for another warehouse, actually the largest wholesale distribution firm of magic supplies in the world, Murphy's Magic Supplies, right in Rancho Cordova. So I did a lot of counting in of magic tricks out of containers from all over the world. Of course, we'd load up trailers, load UPS. So I've been around the transportation industry, going on now, only 30 years.
Right.
But, from a professional standpoint, met with a lot of trucking companies, never worked for a trucking company. I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of drivers and their overlying motor carriers, brokers, truck dealers. For the last 10 years, I actually was a vice president of government programs for a company known as Velocity Vehicle Group. Okay. They're a commercial truck dealership network, the largest in the world at this point in time. So they own the Daimler franchise throughout the Southeast and the Southwest. So we had a lot of customers who were trying to deal with the Air Resources Board rules, try to access incentive funding. So that's really where I've been. I really consider myself part of the industry, even though they won't let me drive a truck necessarily. I've done a lot of ride-alongs and really appreciate what drivers have to go through on a daily basis. And I'll tell you, California is no friend, it seems like, to the trucking industry for better or worse.
I started driving in the 1982 with the Class A license, which is our tractor trailer license up here. Yeah. California was no fun back then, from what I heard. Now I've never run California because I didn't want to be gone that long. From here, that's a week, in one direction, a week back. So I never wanted to be away from home that long. So I didn't really run that far. I ran mostly the East Coast and South. But I've always heard of California. Everybody says, everybody loves going there for some reason, but it's so much trouble. So what's the Harbor Trucking Association? Do you just deal with the container ports and that kind of thing, or are we've got trucking associations up here which deal kind of specific to schools or carriers?
Right. Our main focus is containerized freight movement on the West Coast. So from San Diego all the way up to Seattle, Tacoma. Okay. We have members who do business across the country, but our focus really is on the West Coast, and for the most part, California, just because this is where a lot of the regulatory measures are coming from. Clearly, it's a massive economy, the fourth largest in the world, of which wouldn't be where it's at without trucks, of course. Right. But because of the issues here, we tend to focus on California. And with all the ships that were at anchor about a year and a half ago, November, December timeframe, it really hit the national news spotlight for containers and trucks and chassis and kind of port movement in general. So we've been very proactive in trying to tell the story of the trucking industry and the issues that we have to deal with, not only from a regulatory standpoint, but also from a productivity and an efficiency standpoint, right? We have to make appointments to get into the marine terminals in order to pick up the containers. There's 2 shifts, so it runs from more or less 7, 8 in the morning until about 3 a.m. So we have drivers who are coming from all over the state. And, California's a pretty long state, right? So you can run out of hours easily going from tip to top, as I like to say. But it's a unique industry because it's not just what people would think of typically for drayage or container movement. You're not just going real short distances all the time. We have guys coming from the Central Valley with agricultural commodities. Yep. We have folks coming from or going to Phoenix or Las Vegas. So it's not just kind of the short trips that most people would think of when they think of drayage as that terminology is applied.
Yeah, and we're in Canada, where I am. I'm by Toronto here, so we're in Ontario, which is kind of in the middle. We a lot of containers going in and out of here, but they've got to be trucked to somewhere. So a lot of the drivers do have to truck it out of province in order to get it to a terminal like Montreal, where it goes on the ships. So it's an interesting. I had a friend who was in Vancouver in that industry, and he was really busy for a while. And then when they all got backed up, he actually got laid off. It kind of went the other way, right? So it's interesting. Now, California. Let's get back to them. They have, from what I understand, they have are putting in a mandate 2024 to have everything. I thought it was 2040 that they want everything to be electric trucks being right. But what's this mandate I'm hearing now about 2024? I think I saw it in your.
Right. What's interesting is that, there's several different dates and milestones that the ARB is looking at for full electrification of the transportation network here in California. Electrification or zero emissions. Hydrogen is also a pathway for compliance. But right now, a lot of the emphasis is put on battery electric because you have, commercially speaking, commercial availability is a little more robust from the battery electric standpoint. And that's all the way down to your class 2B type package delivery vehicles, all the way up through class 8 tractor trailers. So where we find the confusion really a lot is that in drayage, especially, the Governor Newsom put out an executive order that said all the drayage trucks in California are going to be zero emissions by 2035. So you have this date of 2035 to say, okay, everybody has to be zero emissions. But what people seem to gloss over in these conversations is that the standard starts in 2024. So in 2024, you will no longer be able to add any internal combustion engines into drayage truck port or intermodal class 1 rail yard service. So you have this issue where, if you have a need for additional capacity after 1/1/24, no more internal combustion engine, period. You have to add zero emissions. And subsequently, every year after that, a reporting requirement starts where a truck is going to need to report its individual odometer mileage every single year. And once it reaches a certain threshold after the engine is 13 years old, then you get phased out. So the first reporting requirement starts in 2025, and at least in LA Long Beach, from the numbers that we've seen so far, it looks about 2,000 trucks are immediately going to be removed from the system. Well, immediately by March 31st of 2025. The reporting starts January 1st. You need to report by February 15th. And then if you're over 800,000 miles on your truck, you're out. So you have kind of these two things working with each other in conjunction towards that 2035 date. But where the confusion sets in is that, yes, at the end of this year, no more internal combustion vehicles can be added into port service starting 1/1/24.
Okay, so when you say added into port service, does that mean if I'm a fleet that has a truck, I cannot buy another diesel truck to go in, or I understand the old ones being taken out, but I'm not sure if I understand what's the added. Explain that part to me. I'm not sure I'm catching that, what that means.
You're exactly right, Bruce. You cannot add an additional diesel or natural gas, any propane for that matter, any internal combustion engine will no longer be eligible for addition into port service, because you have to be in this, what's called a drayage truck registry, in order to get ingress into the covered facilities, which are marine terminals that handle container. You have break bulk ports, like Port of Stockton, for instance, Port of Sacramento, which handles a lot of rice. If you're a port property, then you have to be in this drayage truck registry. And what the state is saying is that after 1/1/24, no more internal combustion. So you have your legacy fleet that can continue to operate until that useful life runs out. Right. But if you want to put in more capacity, say you get a new customer or you recruit another driver, a small fleet owner operator to come in to do drayage service, then that truck will not be able to be added to the registry unless it is a zero emissions drivetrain.
Okay, so what does that do to, I don't know about your market down there. I'm going to assume that you probably have older trucks. We have a lot of older trucks, and the guys who run containers up here, other than some of the fleets, most of them are a lot of owner operators, and a lot of them have the older trucks because they can go from Toronto to Montreal, which is basically a 5-hour trip each way, 6 hours each way. So it's actually easy. There's no borders to cross. So a lot of the older owner operators are running that because they don't want to cross the border into the States and they don't want to buy a new truck. So if it's like that here and we have cold weather and breakdown, and you guys someone can get away with a 30-year-old truck and it probably still looks fairly good because you don't have the salt and the stuff that we normally have here.
Right. We do have varying climates here in California. Obviously, in the mountains, we do have those issues. And that's one thing that's coming up is performance of especially battery electric in extreme weather. Jury's out at this point in time.
Us too.
Yeah, right. One thing that California has that's unique to other states or countries for that matter is that there's already an in-use requirement for heavy-duty diesel vehicles. Yes. So at the end of last year, any engine that did not meet the 2010 US EPA standards was no longer eligible to operate in California, save some exemption pathways for mileage or, captive to particular counties that don't have particulate matter attainment issues. So we already have truncated those older trucks. Right now, the oldest truck you'd be able to operate in California would have a 22-year-old engine, right? 23-year-old engine. So you have some of those vehicles out there, but in port service in particular, while there's a 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013 engines that are out there, if you wanted to add in another truck and add to LA Long Beach at least, which until very recently, Los Angeles was the largest port gateway in North America, you would have to put in a 2014 model year truck. So it can get confusing because the state has engine standards, but the ports of LA and Long Beach have a truck year standard. So, sometimes you need a mathematician to try to figure out how you're going to get into compliance. But suffice it to say, we don't have as many of those old vehicles. Previously, the old joke is in port service, that's where trucks went to die, right? They come off the line. You see these big condo sleepers. You don't really need those for drayage work, especially local stuff, local regional stuff. It's nice to swing your leg over the seat, obviously, or have a tool bag back there or something. But that's where these trucks would go. They'd come off the line, they'd go into port service. So the rules, the legacy rules, the on-road truck and bus rule changed that dynamic. So we don't have nearly as many older diesel vehicles operating in California, primarily because you have these rules that have been in effect. So it's a mixed bag because we also have the large national fleets do port work as well. And some of the smaller fleets, they've gone out and tried to get that newer used truck, 2018 engines, 2019 engines. Obviously, we saw the prices for those vehicles skyrocket during the microprocessor semiconductor shortage when you couldn't get new trucks. But suffice it to say, we're a little bit newer than what typical other port gateways would be, or other province gateways. So it's a little bit of a different animal, but we're still seeing some older vintage equipment, and those are going to be the ones that first get the boot right when 2025 kicks in for that reporting requirement.
What does that do to your workforce? Because I think, if I remember correctly, a year ago, there was not enough truck drivers getting into the port and doing you had too much containers, and now we've already got. You can argue you've got a driver shortage, whether you want to or not. Everybody's looking for drivers. Now we're cutting them out based on the equipment that they're driving. And the owner operators are on a fine line. A single owner operator can't just afford to go buy a new truck because California has decided that so what's that doing to your workforce? Are you finding people moving out of the state, changing to different types of jobs, or what are you seeing there?
We have seen some attrition. We've seen some drivers, just especially volumes are so low right now due to the uncertainty around the ILWU, that's the International Longshore Warehouse Union contract that hasn't been finalized. You had a lot of shippers diverting to the Eastern Seaboard and Gulf ports. So we've seen a volume downtick, which has also kind of driven, no pun intended, some drivers to go to other industries, aggregate, construction, over the road, even in some instances. But when we think about the owner operators, it becomes even more complicated because I'm sure some of your listeners may be familiar with, this bill AB5, right? More or less banned the owner operator model as we know it. The leased on owner operator model does not exist in California anymore.
No, we're waiting to see what you guys do. We're waiting to see what you guys do because we're going through that in Canada here. We call it Driver Inc. We're going through this whole classification, and I think everybody's waiting to see how California decides, right? That's where it is.
There was an initial lawsuit that went all the way to the California Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court here in the U.S., which the court rejected hearing it. So it immediately went into effect. It was retroactive back to 2020. So we had an injunction in place for about 2.5 years. Wow. Just last year, and June 30th is when the Supreme Court decided not to hear it. Another suit was filed both by the California Trucking Association and OOIDA, that the Independent Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association. So there's another lawsuit that we're looking towards, probably a July timeframe for another hearing on a preliminary injunction. So we'll see how the litigation side of things works. But here in California, it's the law of the land, and there's no shortage of container chasing attorneys out there that from the plaintiff's bar that are more than willing. We also have the Private Attorney General Act, where an individual can bring a lawsuit against a trucking company for what's called misclassification. You guys are dealing with this now. The irony behind all of it is all the owner operators that I spoke to during the development of AB5, you hear their testimony, you kind of hear them in the chat rooms lamenting about the state and its uber liberal policies trying to destroy their business model. And, they're not wrong necessarily, but we're waiting for this other shoe to drop here because enough lawsuits, class action lawsuits come out or statewide enforcement action, fleets are going to start reconsidering how they're trying to help these owner operators remain in business. We call them small fleets out here, right? Not owner operators, because it's turning into a dirty word, unfortunately. Despite the fact that every large major nationwide trucking company started pretty much with one person, one truck, right? That entrepreneurial pathway has been revoked really from the small fleets these days. And when I talk to these owner operators, they're like, look, I don't want to be an employee. If I wanted to be an employee driver, I go take one of the dozens of employee jobs that are out there. You alluded to the driver shortage, right? That depends on who you ask, of course.
Right. Yeah.
There's various things about turnover, et cetera. And down here locally, we don't really have the driver shortage that they're feeling over the road. Right. Regardless, everyone's always looking for qualified drivers. That is hands down, no matter what. You might want to think about dusting off that Class A because this market is still developing out here. So, in case you want to, it's a little expensive to live out here in California. The joke is, the weather's nice, right? They don't want to be employees. They wanted to maintain that freedom. And so you had a lot of trucking companies create brokerages. So now you could go and as an owner op, you're not, you can't do the leased on and you probably should have your operating authority in the first place. But now you got to dust off that operating authority, go secure your own insurance and all the required permits, your interchanges to go into the ports. You need to make your own appointments. So there is a pathway for folks to remain in a, not the same as the leased on operator model, but in a small fleet, single truck model. But now you're just dealing with brokerages as opposed to the overlying carriers. Right. And you have a lot more responsibility that you're going to need to focus on, especially for equipment interchange, for the chassis, for the container itself. Sure. You have credit worthiness that they're going to screen you to make sure that they can come after you if you, damage their equipment. You want to make sure you have enough assets and credit for them to be able to collect. So those hurdles have really limited the ability of people to stay in business as an owner operator. And, we saw a lot of efficiency constraints down here during the supply chain crisis. So it wasn't so much that we didn't have enough drivers, is that we couldn't return empty containers that were sitting on top of chassis that we then couldn't use to move other containers off the docks. So we had guys that were being sent home even at the height of the crisis because there was nothing to move. You could not move that box off the dock because we couldn't find a chassis. So, now with all the downward regulatory pressure, guys are saying, guys and gals are just like, look, I'm over it. Yeah. I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to go move to Texas, Nevada, Arizona. And, those bordering states, as we like to say, are getting Californified by all the residents moving out of California into those states. And kind of changing the dynamic from a kind of district constituency perspective. So we'll see how it all pans out, unfortunately. But this is not a business friendly state to begin with. And it's definitely not a trucking friendly state. Honestly, we have Teamster member companies. All due respect to the IBT, the motivation has really been, especially in port trucking, to get rid of all those smaller companies. Get some just massive asset-based employee driver companies and more or less just go after them for unionization. So that's the unfortunate reality that we're dealing with. And, I feel for some of these men and women who have built businesses, sent their kids through college, then to watch, their liberal arts major daughter, on a field trip through her university up to Sacramento to testify about more or less destroying the trucking industry through these air quality mandates. So, the irony is thick at least, but it's no shortage of challenges, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the real challenge, I think, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it on Tim's show there, the amount of chargers, like the support system that has to go in to meet this mandate, is unbelievable. I mean, even up here, we're talking the same thing, and I see like 5 chargers here, 2 chargers there. I can't imagine a truck stop full of trucks that all need to be charged. I don't even know how that's going to happen. I stopped driving 15 years ago, so I drove for 25 years, but I stopped 15 years ago professionally. So I'm kind of glad I'm not in this anymore.
Right.
I'm still in the industry. So how do you see this happening? What are the conversations? You're a smart guy. I'm sure you've been at a lot of these meetings. You must have told them this isn't going to work in the time frame you want. Like, where are we sitting with this? All these chargers that we need to have and the supports and buying new. I don't even see how this happens.
It's in one ear out the other for the regulators, and even on many of the legislators, especially in the majority party down here, who has a super majority in California. So you don't even need Republicans to check, fiscal authority. The state and the Democratic majority can basically do whatever they want. And the unfortunate thing about that is that then you have members of parties that are on such extreme polar political opposites that it's just, it's banana town out here, right? There's nothing that you can do or say to try to convince them that some of these policies are short-sighted at best and, malicious at worst. And, we're talking about in 2030, the estimates from the California Energy Commission say that we're going to need 157,000 medium and heavy-duty chargers to support the deployment. That's in 2030. Granted, that's, 7 years some odd away. But, that equates to about 400, over 400 chargers that need to be installed per week just to meet that deadline, not to mention the grid capacity, the transmission capacity. Some circuits down here in Southern California, especially through SoCal Edison's territory, they have excess capacity. Right. Other circuits, not at all. And when you think about the permitting challenges that it goes to putting in just even a warehouse here in California to try to build a micro grid with solar and storage or even nuclear, right? The timelines to build that out take so long, and it's just massive initial capital investment that time is not on our side on the one hand, and sure, the government is going to throw good money after bad money at this, but we're all wondering because we have the mandate starts for entry in as little as 7 months, right? 8 months. We have then this mileage issue in 2025. So 2025, we estimate, from the numbers that the ARB puts out there, which are also just estimates, no real world information. They won't have that for some time. We're talking about 2,000 trucks, and in 2025 will be basically removed from the system. If you assume a 1-to-1 replacement with zero emission battery electric, that equates to about 200, maybe 150, depending on duty cycle, volume, etc. But at least 150 additional megawatts of energy that are going to be needed to charge all of these trucks. And, of course, not everyone's plugging in at the same time, right. But if they were, that's enough energy to power a small city. Yeah. So where the energy is going to come from, how they're going to be able to store it, distribute it, all of these things leave us with a little bit of pause because we can't just go down the street and fill up a diesel. It takes you 15 minutes to fill up your diesel truck. Even currently today with the current charger output, you're not going to get a full tank of batteries, so to speak, right. With the existing charging capacity that's out there. It's going to take you at least an hour, best case scenario. So we don't know, Bruce. Honestly,
we're the same up here. We they're taxing us. There's an environmental tax that we've been paying on every. I have not seen any improvement since they started doing that. We're putting a subway in Toronto. It's going 2 blocks, and they're talking 7 years, to do it, or 4.5 years, or something like that. So how could you put in those many chargers? We're in the wrong game. We need to be in the charger game. I think we need to start now. So I just don't understand how they're going to. It's one thing to put out dates, and I'm a goal setting guy. We all have to have a goal to kind of work against, but I don't see it. So what do you do? What are you not? What are you doing? But what is your association doing, or other than spreading the word and saying, okay, hey, here's what's happening. What is the talk going on there of how we are actually going to solve this, whether we're going to try and work with them and meet them or battle them all the way? I don't know which way, California is going that way, but what is the Harbor Association thinking that they're going to have to do? Can this be done?
We're a can-do industry, right? That's about trucking. Like, we'll get it done one way or another, but how many, corpses of small businesses lining the roadway to this aspirational goal remains to be seen. And as we are thinking about us trying to meet these deadlines, from our perspective, we really try to do a lot of education. And that's not only for the regulators, and again, in one ear, out the other, but for our members and for the larger community. We've held several ride and drives with zero emission trucks. So we'll partner with our OEM sponsors. They'll bring trucks. We'll set up a whole day. We'll do a barbecue. We'll have food trucks. Folks can come out, drive the truck around the stadium parking lot or local and right on some surface streets to get an idea about performance. Yeah. And we have also a lot of these charging pedestal manufacturers. A new thing now is trucks as a service. Right. Where basically you just take your original kind of the leasing concept for a truck and you just add in parking and charging into it for one low monthly payment of, $5,000 or whatever it is. So there's some solutions out there, and we're really trying to show our members that, look, this is inevitable, right? You mentioned it, Bruce. These are goals. Okay. Yeah. The state of California, as it's affectionately referred to out here, the land of fruits, nuts, and flakes, that they're going to do what they're going to do. Yeah. And if you want to be left standing, you need to be thinking about this today. Right. And so we try to create these educational opportunities. We do webinars, we do in-person seminars. I'll go on my, media blitzkrieg. We'll work with other associations to do educational things. We'll work with the ports. We'll work with, other small local air quality management districts to do education about the technology itself. And to be honest, when you get behind the wheel and you're driving it, I hear a lot of good positive feedback from the drivers. Plenty of torque, right? Yep. Plenty of power. You don't smell like diesel. It's a heavier vehicle, so you're not getting shaken around a little bit. But the flip side of that is you have less range, so you're not getting that 1,200 miles out of a full tank. You're getting, best case scenario, downhill both ways with a tailwind, maybe 250, right? The heavier the battery, the farther you can go, but that's less payload. Yeah. So depending on how much of these truck trips you're going to be doing, you might need 2 trucks to do this job of 1. Yeah. And of course, cost. The vehicles are out the door with FET, sales tax. You're looking at $500,000.
Wow.
And so that doesn't even include the charging infrastructure. You look at, the fast charging, the DC fast charge, 350 kilowatt hour fast chargers, things like $100,000 just for the charging pedestal itself. You start talking about land availability. Well, in Southern California, heck, throughout any major metropolitan areas in California, land is at a premium. Yep. And, as your listeners know, man, unfortunately, we get treated kind of how law enforcement gets this same perspective. Nobody likes them until they need them, right? Nobody likes trucks on their neighborhood, on the freeway, until you need your stuff. Right. Where's all my toilet paper? We had that crazy.
We did it here too. Yeah.
Here, it's like, I don't know why people went for toilet paper. That was the thing they were most worried about. So whether it's toilet paper, PPE, medicine, right, clothing, housing supplies, all of these things, right, preaching to the choir here, they're all moved by trucks. And communities, environmental justice groups, and just environmental groups in general, we're a low-hanging fruit. We're easy to get. We're very visible. And so that's who they go after. And we try to, promote the industry as a whole as the lifeblood of the economy. The trucks stop, the economy stops. That message is also lost on people. Right. People have short-term memory when it comes to the importance of truck drivers in this world, really, the world over. It runs on trucks. I will challenge anybody. I'm like that meme, convince me I'm wrong. Right. Trucks rule the world. I say trucks feed you. Yeah. We try, we endeavor to make sure that this is something that people have access to the information. The flip side of that coin is that there is no doubt that this rule on some level or another is going to be litigated. Yeah. But that's going to take millions of dollars that could probably be spent better elsewhere. Yeah. But the state of California, their mentality is if you don't like it, sue us. Yeah. And frankly, there's a track record that shows that is the pathway for folks.
Wow. We're that's what we're struggling with here. The distance that drivers have to travel here, and we don't have the truck stop network that you have, in the States. So it's a real struggle parking, and and that's why we haven't gone to electric. I think we're going to see a lot of the local companies move to electric, but as far as the guys, going in between, there's no way at this point anyway that they can do that on electric charge. And of course, we get some pretty cold temperatures up here, so I'm not sure how that's even going to work. I know in the province of Quebec, a number of people that had electric vehicles, they wouldn't start. So what do you do when it doesn't start? What do you do in a power outage? We have some major power outages now without all of the electric vehicles on the grid. What happens when everybody goes on the grid? And I understand that, from what I understand, that electric vehicles can build enough charge to actually last a couple days, and actually maybe power the house. I know that's what they're talking about in some provinces here. I don't know how true that is, but we're in a real flux here, and we're kind of watching what's going on, in California and those kind of places to see how we've got to do. We've got the same 2030 mandate here for every new vehicle has to be electric that's being sold after 2030, but we don't have the support system in. So when we sell them all, I'm keeping my truck forever. I don't know how long I'm going to have it. Right. It's crazy to see how this works.
It's crazy. I mean, there's nothing better to describe it, really. It's ludicrous. And, again, they're goals, but it's aspirational. It's not reality based. This is about politics. This isn't about reality. Heck, it's not even about emissions reductions. You joke, what do you do when the grid's down? It's like, well, I hope you got a diesel generator to back up, to fire that thing up to start charging your electric trucks, right? That's sort of the joke. Yeah. And while we're moving towards full decarbonization of the, electric supply, we're years away from that. We're still 30% here in California. Non-renewable fossilized natural gas makes up, from an individual source standpoint, is the majority, comparatively speaking, to the others. Yes, we have solar, we have wind, we have hydroelectric. Thank God it started raining again last winter, because we were in a major drought, the entire West Coast pretty much. So we're seeing some positive developments there, but performance-wise, we don't know. And this vehicle to grid, there's regenerative braking. You should be able to, but again, these guys, you're under 82,000 pounds, because there is a 2,000 pound exemption in California if you're running natural gas or zero emissions. So you get 2,000 pounds on any axle. So you're 82,000 pounds. That takes a lot of energy to move that. Yeah. And granted, you go up over the grapevine down here in Southern California, you're white knuckle getting to the top of that thing. Yeah, you're going to get some energy back on your way back down into the valley, but temperature makes a difference. How heavy your foot is, right? Whether or not you're doing a lot of stopping or coasting. If you're not stopping or coasting, you're not getting that regeneration. So there's all these kind of outliers. And for the guys, especially moving those agricultural commodities in the valley down into the Port of Oakland or into LA Long Beach, you got 80% of the citrus coming, through supplying the world with, 80% of its citrus coming out of the Central Valley. I can't make a round trip from Fresno to LA Long Beach, and there's not enough charging infrastructure down here to make the one-way trip. And even if there were, I got to sit here for 3 hours potentially, where there's some debate, right, relative to hours of service. You get 30-minute, you can do an on-duty break, not driving, and get your 30-minute break while you're charging. But once that's up, it's starting to count towards your on-duty time. So how that functions, and you mentioned truck parking, California is woefully lacking truck parking. Yep. Caltrans did a study, and it's so funny because all of us in the industry, we're like Karnak, Johnny Carson, what is none is the answer to truck parking studies in California. There's not enough. And it's primarily because you have, the NIMBY folks, but the banana people, right? It's build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody, especially truck related. People do not like it. And so we'll see. I mean, I'm concerned. I have these conversations with, again, from an owner operator all the way up to the largest Fortune 500 fleets in the country. And some of them are saying we get it. Right. Some of the big guys are able to go out and, absorb some of those losses elsewhere in their balance sheets. But even they're we're not sure exactly how this is going to pan out.
Right.
And, you get sustainability questions from customers. It's like, look, when you start pressing people on ESG, that's environmental sustainability and governance, or whatever the acronym stands for. I've tried to not be thinking about it lately. When you're trying to get your product to market, you will get it there however you can.
Right.
That last mile, especially, like if it's not going, and we saw this during the supply chain crisis, you had small little neighborhood toy stores in rural communities that were not getting their Christmas inventory.
Right.
So when you start pressing people on it, cost is an issue for sure, but it's about reliability. If I can't guarantee that product is going to get to that retail location so I can sell it, so I can continue my business, you might start turning a blind eye on how that product is actually getting there. So while some of these big shippers talk a big game, when it comes down to brass tacks, they're going to want that stuff there. And if an electric truck isn't going to be able to move it, they're probably not going to have a problem with a diesel or even a natural gas truck moving it to that final destination.
Wow. So what would you like people to do if you could say, hey, here's what we need you to do? What would you want fleets or owner operators to do or start thinking about? Is there anything they can do now to start meeting those goals?
Well, you got to start thinking about it right now. I mean, that's the thing. You got to start thinking about how many miles you're doing, what kind of routes you're doing. Obviously, for some owner operators, it's not as predictable as some. You're taking whatever loads either off load boards or from brokers that you can get. Hopefully, you're not deadheading back. So it's hard to plan relative to that. But you got to start thinking, looking at incentives opportunities out there, looking at, not only truck incentives, but infrastructure incentives, looking at this trucks as a service model. Is this something that might work for my fleet? The other side of that, Bruce, honestly, is when the industry is coming around asking for donations for a lawsuit, $5, $10, just like Obama did it. I'm sure the industry will take it to fight, because we're talking about fighting the fourth largest economy in the world that has unlimited resources at its disposal. It's going to be an expensive fight. Yep. Us at HTA, we're not going to sue the state of California.
Great.
It's not in our wheelhouse. We're really about education and advocacy. We don't want to waste time, energy, and resources on trying to sue the state of California. But I can tell you, our partner associations, our sister associations are most definitely, and they've already drawn the line in the sand. So at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but we can have to open up those checkbooks or send $5 to the litigation fund, because we're going to need it. And it's not like it's going to make it go away. The only thing it's going to do is delay it, which ideally will create more time, more opportunity to get that infrastructure deployed, so we can have a sustainable, not an environmental, but an economically sustainable trucking sector that can run on low carbon, no carbon, zero emissions. That's the future. Let's try to get there in right steps. Unfortunately, it might take litigation to get us there, but always good to start thinking about it right now.
Yeah. What about people coming into the state from out of state? I don't think from Canada here, we're hauling containers across to California. I'm sure they're going by either rail or ship or however they go from here. But for people who are probably in those closer states, the Arizona and Texas and stuff like that, they probably could haul. I don't know what happens to them. They've just got to meet those guidelines, I guess, as well. That's bringing it out to a lot more companies that are going to be impacted.
Exactly. And for drayage, it's pretty cut and dry. If you want into the terminals, you have to be in the drayage truck registry.
Wow.
Period. So you don't have a choice, no matter where you're based. And, there are instances sometimes when containers do come long distances because it's a hot commodity, right? They don't have time to put it on rail or wait for the rail, it's spur to be able to unload it, find a chassis, et cetera. You want that thing point A to point B ASAP. So there are those anomalies that happen. So, but if you want into the terminals, both the rail and the port terminals, you're going to have to be in the drayage truck registry. So you have no choice. If you're not doing drayage, then you're under something potentially known as this high priority fleets, where if you're contracting with an overlying that has more than 50 trucks or makes more than $50 million and owns one truck, that includes brokerages. We'll see how load boards work, because it's all about the controlling entity who's controlling that dispatch. If that controlling entity is controlling a dispatch for a truck and they fall into the high priority fleets requirement, which is a phase in by GVWR, then very likely, depending on where they're at in their percentage threshold, they might not be able to contract with that particular truck because it's not zero emissions. That is a real thing that will work itself out here in the future. But it's hard to say exactly how it's going to impact. But if you're coming into California, you need to be aware of this stuff. One thing that is outside of zero emissions is that we basically have a diesel smog check here in California now, which impacts any vehicle that's coming into the state. You basically have to be registered with the California Air Resources Board and demonstrate that you have registered and reported your vehicle to them, and carry a piece of paper, could be on your phone as a PDF, but some type of proof that you've done the reporting. Otherwise, no matter where you're coming from, you get a citation on the spot. And I've had out-of-state guys tell me like, oh yeah, I've gotten those citations, and I throw them out the window, or at least into the trash bucket in the truck, and the EPA comes after you. Wow. Because these are all part of the state implementation plans for the state of California that has authority from the federal government to pass rules that meet these goals for national ambient air quality standards. So de facto enforcement could be done on out-of-state, out-of-country fleets by actually the federal EPA. So there's really nowhere to hide. California's not going to break off into the ocean anytime soon, contrary to popular belief. So if you're coming into California, maybe there'll be some transfer stations at those border crossings of Arizona and Nevada and Oregon. But until we see those, popping up more robustly, then it's going to be, you come into California, you need to comply with the law.
Wow. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on this for sure. It sounds like it's going to be an interesting fight, and I hope you guys. I don't know what worries me is they follow up here what you guys do, whether they've done their homework or not. So that's what scares me a little bit.
We are the bleeding edge of progressive policy here in the Golden State.
Where can we learn more about the Harbor Trucking Association and this fight? I'm sure you probably have press releases and stuff on your website. Where should we go?
We do. We're at harbortruckers.org. That's Harbor Truckers, all one word, plural.org, or .com also works. So we have some information up there. You can follow me on LinkedIn at Matt Schrap. I'm constantly updating that with some of the challenges that we're facing, not only from the air quality front, but some of the other challenges that the industry faces. And we're on all the Harbor Truckers is all on all the other socials out there. So drop us a line, say hello out there, drivers, and really appreciate what you're doing here, Bruce. Really appreciate your listeners. There are many of us out there who appreciate what you guys are doing, and just like to extend a hearty thank you to all of you men and women out there, you knights, dames, and dons of the highway. Please keep it up, and keep fighting. We're all in this together, to say the least.
Well, thank you very much. And for all of us, the Canadian guys, that's a harbor without a U.
Exactly. Good clarification. Yes,
I know, because I put it in. I tried to put it in your website that way at first, and they go, "Oh, that's why it didn't work."
HARBOR. Exactly.
Right. That's right. Matt, thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and good luck with this. I'm not sure. I wish I had some answers. We're kind of following right along with you. So the fights are already no fights here. The conversations have started.
Right.
And our truck shows now are starting to come out. So I know the next one, Expo Cama, at the end of this month in Quebec, I think they're focusing a lot of the show on electric trucks. So looking to see if I get some information there. I'm not sure I'll be able to help you any, but we'll try, right? Thanks for being with me, my friend.
Hey, Bruce, thanks again. I look forward to continuing the dialogue, man. Thank you again.
Thank you. Hey, folks. If you are a private motor truck council carrier, then you need to be at the PMTC conference. And even if you're not, you should be at the PMTC conference. That's right. So what's the PMTC, Private Motor Truck Council of Canada? They have their annual conference June 21st to 22nd to 23rd, 2023. It's in Hamilton, Ontario this year at the Hamilton Convention Center, and that's by Carmen's. You can learn all about it at pmtc.ca. Right now, they've got member pricing and non-member pricing, and I got to tell you, this year that you can stay at the Sheraton Hamilton Hotel. They've got lots of stuff coming up. We are looking forward to it. We've been part of this conference for the last few years, and I got to say, it is one of the best conferences going on in our industry. So where do you learn more? At pmtc.ca. Check it out. Private Motor Truck Council of Canada. If you are a private carrier or somebody who wants to work with private carriers, you want to be in this room. They've got awards, they've got seminars, they've got a trade show, and they've got all kinds of stuff for you. So we'll see you there. We're going to be in Hamilton, and you're going to be there too, hopefully. June 21st to 23rd, 2023. Go to pmtc.ca. See you later. All right, so there you go. Hopefully you got a good some good information out of that. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to harbortruckers.org or harbortruckers.com to learn more about that. This advanced clean fleets rule is going to affect everybody and will really... It has an impact immediately. They're sort of throwing out things like dates of 2030 and 2035, but actually it starts as of January 1st, 2024, which is a lot closer than you think. So I hope you enjoyed that. Reach out to them if you need more information, and thanks for listening to the podcast. Hey, you can follow us on our socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find us on TikTok and help us celebrate our 1,000, the Lead Pedal 1,000. That's right. That's what we're doing this year, and we would love to have you part of it. All right, my friends, talk to you later. Be good out there. Bye for now.
This has been another episode of the Lead Pedal Podcast. For more information or to subscribe to the podcast, visit theleadpedalpodcast.com and be sure to follow the podcast on Facebook and Twitter.